Unfair charges levied on buyers of new-build houses could be banned in England under a proposed crackdown. Leaseholds on new homes would be outlawed, while ground rents could be dramatically reduced under government plans which are going to go out to consultation. Earlier this year, this programme revealed how ground rents can double every decade, crippling homeowners and in some cases making a property impossible to sell. Now the government said enough is enough, describing the practices as unjust, unnecessary, and they need to stop. Community Secretary Sajiv Javid set out the proposals, which will only apply in England.
If you take parts of sort of Cheshire and Greater Manchester, almost, yes, there's some developments there that are almost all entirely leasehold houses. And when you explore this, you look at it in the detail, there's no good reason. And then what makes it worse is that often those come attached with ground rent clauses that see an ever escalating rent increase. In some cases, in many cases actually, I've seen they can go up from, say, they start at something that sounds reasonable, a couple of £100 a year, and then within 30 to 40 years, it's £10,000 a year.
Well, in February this year, our reporter James Longman exposed what had been taking place on new build homes around the country.
A developer builds a house. Here it is. It sells that house to Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Here they are. But what it sold is the lease to that house. That's time in it. They haven't sold the ground it's on. That's the freehold, and they keep that. This is the crucial bit. A couple of years later, the developer is then able to sell the freehold, that's the ground that it's on, to an investment company. Here he is, Mr. Investor. It's a way of making money on the same house twice. And here's the other catch. Because it's a house and not a flat, the law says that the developer does not have to warn Mr. and Mrs. Smith that they're going to do any of this. And this whole business is worth hundreds of millions of pounds every year to the developers. This is Ellesmere Port near Liverpool. It's a development like thousands of others across the UK. But the houses here are leasehold. The developers keep the freehold in order to sell them separately. So people living here are essentially living on ground which is being sold from underneath their feet, and they don't even know about it.
I had no idea that my home would be used as an endless income stream for an investor or somebody else's pension pot, because that's what it is.
Katie Kendrick bought her home from Bellway developers. She was never told her freehold would be sold off. Now she wants to buy it. The price has gone from £4,000 to £13,000.
Where do they get that figure from?
I have absolutely no idea. I've asked the company for a breakdown of how the freehold is calculated, the methodology to the valuation, to which they've failed to provide me with. They've said that I can either go with it, or if I challenge it, then I have to take on their legal fees to do so. They have said that I can come back with a counter offer, but without all of the information on how they calculate the freehold, how can I make an informed decision how to counteract their offer? So at the moment, I just feel completely blind in a corner.
Since then, Katie Kendrick's campaign on Facebook has gone national, and over 5,000 people who've fallen foul of the leasehold rules are fighting for a change in the law. And Katie's in our Merseyside newsroom. Hello, Katie. Also with us, Lisa Chappell, who says her life is being ruined by the hike in leasehold fees she now has to pay. And Rico Vitalevich is here. He represents the House Builders Association, plus Labour MP Clive chairs the Communities and Local Government Select Committee. He's in our Sheffield newsroom. OK, so Katie, in terms of what the Community Secretary has said today, what are you thinking?
Well, obviously this is really welcome news, and this is a massive step in the right direction. But, you know, let's not forget the thousands of people already stuck. You know, this, as I said, this is a good step in the right direction, but it's still a far way from actually fixing what is already broken. OK.
What, in your view, specifically needs to change tomorrow?
Well, there needs to be an outright ban on leasehold moving forward, but we also need to address how we're going to get people back into owning their own homes, which is what we thought that we were going to do. So we want our freeholds.
Right, so that you want retrospective action, effectively.
Absolutely, yeah. That is the only way that is going to be resolved for all of the thousands that are already stuck with these unsellable houses. OK, we've got a statement from the house building company Taylor Wimpey. They say this in response to the government's planned consultation. We're working hard with the freeholders to convert our customers' doubling leases at our expense.
Taylor Wimpey has set aside £130 million to cover the cost of converting the leases on our customers' behalf. Is that helpful?
No. To be perfectly honest, that's not very welcomed by the leaseholders. Our view on this is no more than a sticking plaster on a weeping sore. This is not going to allow leaseholders to purchase their freeholds. This is only going to revert them to a RPI lease, which is not what we want. We want people to own their freeholds. It is the only way out. The Taylor Wimpey offer is not as good as it seems. As far as I'm concerned, it's just skimming over a really bad situation that they have created.
OK. Lisa, hello. Thanks for coming on the programme. Tell our audience about how your ground rent is due to double.
We bought our property in December of 2009. We did know we was buying a leasehold property and we knew that it was going to be £250 a year, but we was never told that that would ever increase, never mind double. We then found out in January this year that ours is due to double in January of 2018, which is at the 10-year mark apparently, even though we've not been in our property for 10 years, but it's based on when the land was sold and bought.
And that will be how much, Lisa?
So we will then double to £500 in January of 2018.
And when did you realise that? Clearly not early enough beforehand.
No, we found out in January of this year, so January 2017, and that's when we started to campaign from then on. We were never informed of this at all, either by the conveyancing solicitors or Taylor Wimpey, who was our house builder.
OK. So let me bring in Rico Vitalevich then from the House Builders Association. Who do you represent?
We represent small and medium-sized house builders and constructors. We're the house building division of the National Federation of Builders.
OK, so what is the justification for building new homes with leaseholds?
Well, I mean, it really depends. If perhaps you are a local authority or a council trying to build property on land you already own, and perhaps you want a limited time lease of 250 or 500 years, or perhaps you're a national trust who has heritage buildings.
OK, but let's talk about normal people like Lisa and Casey.
Well, absolutely.
What's the justification?
Well, from our point of view, none of our members provide that business model. When I spoke to a member, taking Lisa's point there, in 10 years, she'll see an increase, I think it was £500. That would take 150 years, as one of the members I spoke to in Sheffield, which doubles from £100 and it goes to £100 every 30 years. So 60 years, £200, 90 years, £300. That's a lot fairer. Especially when you consider the cost perhaps of sustainable drainage or the lighting on a site.
Oh, I can see Lisa shaking her head in disagreement.
No, I disagree with that because we were never told that it was ever to double. So how can we ever make an informed decision? We thought we was buying our property. And also, actually, our lease is capped at 50 years, but it doubles every 10 years, which we've only found out about. So actually, in 2058, which I know sounds a very long time away, we'll be paying £8,000 a year in ground rent alone. And actually, I will end up be paying long term about £182,000 just on leasehold alone, never mind my mortgage or what my house is worth.
Let me bring in Clive Betts then, Labour MP, Chair of the Community Select Committee. Hello to you.
Hello.
Is this simply financial exploitation by the big house builders?
Well, I can't see any justification at all why houses, we're not talking about flats here, we're talking about houses which are built on their own piece of land, that land shouldn't be sold with the house on a freehold basis. I can't see any justification apart from either the house builder or eventually an investment company thinking they can make profit at the house owner's expense. So I think the government's absolutely right to talk about ending this practice for the future, but just listening there to the conversation, it's also right that we have to think what we can do to help those people who are in the situation where they can be exploited with unreasonable increases in leasehold charges in the future.
Go on, you want to come back in here?
Clive and Lisa are talking about two different things to the model that our members operate. Ours is a very fair and proportionate approach. I would absolutely disagree with homeowners having their tenancy, effectively their tenancy, put in jeopardy. Absolutely shouldn't be put in jeopardy. But if you work to the models that I explained that our members perhaps work, 249-year lease, £100 every 10 years, every 30 years it would increase. Actually, if you look at inflation, and you can also buy that freehold, it's called freehold reversion, and our members will work with you on the informal.
But the point is that the people think they're buying the freehold when they buy the house.
Well, I cannot speak for the model.
No, I know.
I cannot speak for the model of bigger organisation.
Go on, Katie. Katie, I can see you coming in.
Can I just say that this issue isn't just about how much you pay in a year for ground rent. This is about all the extra permission fees that they add on. Permission to build an extension or a conservatory that doesn't even need planning permission, gone up to £2,600. That is absolutely ridiculous. That is permission to do absolutely nothing but just to say yes.
Clive Betts, are you going to push in this consultation for retrospective help for people like Lisa and Katie?
I think we've got to, because I think Katie, right at the beginning of this piece, put her finger on it when she said this is okay for the future, and we ought to act for the future, because for every so-called reasonable leasehold arrangement, others can bring in unreasonable ones. So let's stop the whole practice, because it's just not necessary. There's no justification. But then we have all the people who are caught in these unreasonable arrangements, which they've already signed up to, when investment companies can come in and then, as Katie's just explained, not merely the ground rent increases, but you want to put a small extension on your house, a loft conversion, you pay an arm and a leg for it. That simply isn't fair. So I think we ought to press the government a bit harder. Let's do something retrospectively as well.
I want to bring viewers this news. It's to do with an incident in Shaw in Oldham. Police are continuing to respond to an ongoing incident at a property on Pemberton Way. Police were called to reports that a man armed with a gun